It's strange, the things you don't see until it's too late. The cracks, the silence, the shift in someone's eyes. You notice all of it in hindsight, but when it's happening, you're just living. You don't think the person you kiss goodbye in the morning will be the same one who breaks you. I used to think my marriage was strong. Not flashy, not perfect, but solid. We had 2 kids, a decent house, a routine. It wasn't exciting anymore, but that's what happens after more than a decade. Stability starts to matter more than fireworks. I didn't need grand gestures, I just wanted honesty. Presence. A partner. I thought I had that. She worked full-time, same as me. We split the housework when we could, juggled schedules, took turns staying up with the kids when they were sick. She was tired a lot. Burnout, overextended. I could see it building in her. The late nights on the laptop, the way she rubbed her temples like she was trying to squeeze the pressure out of her skull. I told her she needed a break. Something for herself. That's how the trip came up. She didn't ask for it. I brought it up after hearing her friends were planning something. A weekend away, 2 of her girlfriends and a guy they all knew from college. She said he was gay. I didn't think much about that part. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? I told her to go. Said I'd handle the girls, take care of everything at home. She deserved it. She smiled like she hadn't in a long time. I remember the morning she left. I helped her pack. Loaded her bag in the trunk. She looked good, sweatshirt, leggings, no makeup, hair tied up. Comfortable. Relaxed. I kissed her. Wished her fun. Watched her drive off while holding our youngest in one arm and waving with the other. That was the last normal moment I remember. The weekend itself felt like any other from my end. I played dad. Made pancakes. Cleaned up messes. Built pillow forts. Sent her photos of the girls painting and eating ice cream on the porch. She replied with a heart emoji. Sent one picture of herself with a glass of wine, cheeks a little flushed. Looked happy. Looked free. I thought that was a good thing. She came back Sunday night. Tired but smiling. Hugged the girls, kissed me quickly, said she had a great time. I didn't notice anything off. Not at first. But I think that's when something had already shifted, and I just didn't feel it yet. Over the next couple of days, I started noticing little things. She was distant. Not cold, not rude, just off. Her eyes didn't settle. Her mind was somewhere else. She moved through the house like a shadow of herself. Her phone never left her side. She jumped when notifications came in. She started showering later at night and sleeping earlier. At first I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was just being overly sensitive, misreading normal stress as something worse. But that gut feeling, the one that tightened slowly, low and sharp like a warning, started crawling in and never left. I'd ask if she was okay. She'd say she was tired. I believed her. I had no reason not to. But something about the way she looked at me had changed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was absence. Like her mind had disconnected from her body and hadn't come back yet. I started overthinking. Every glance, every sentence, every shift in tone. I started wondering what had really happened on that trip. I tried not to go there, but the thoughts came anyway. Who did she meet? What did she drink? How much did she remember? I didn't want to be that husband, the one who doubts, who snoops, who interrogates. But I also couldn't ignore the cold in her voice when she said goodnight. The way she avoided eye contact when I asked about the trip. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew something was missing. One night, I woke up and she wasn't in bed. It was 2 a.m. I found her in the kitchen, just standing there, barefoot, staring at nothing. When she realized I was there, she smiled like she'd been caught stealing something. She said she couldn't sleep. I said nothing. She went back to bed. I stayed in the hallway, listening to the silence stretch out until the house felt empty. That was the first time I let myself think the word betrayal. I didn't have proof. No messages, no pictures, no confessions. But I had instinct. And instinct doesn't lie. Guilt isn't loud. It doesn't come in shouting or slam doors. It's quiet. Heavy. Like a fog that seeps into the air between two people and makes everything harder to breathe. After the trip, that fog moved into our house. I could feel it every time I was near her. It settled in the corners of our bedroom. It filled the space between us on the couch. It clung to her like perfume she couldn't wash off. She was careful. Whatever happened on that weekend, she came home trying to bury it under routine. She hugged the girls, did the laundry, made dinner. But it was like watching someone reenact their own life. The warmth wasn't there. Her timing was off. The details were too perfect, too rehearsed. That's what finally triggered it for me, not what she was doing, but how forced it felt. She'd never been good at lying. Not in the small ways. I knew the way her voice sounded when she was distracted. I knew when her laugh wasn't real. I knew how she looked at me when her mind was somewhere else. And now all of that was showing up at once. She smiled too fast when I asked questions. She answered with short, vague phrases. She touched me less. Even her scent changed, subtle, but different. A body doesn't forget those things. It's wired into you, the way someone smells when they lean into your chest. When that smell changes, you notice, even if you can't explain it. She told me she was tired. Told me work was stressful. Told me she just needed a few days to get back into rhythm. I wanted to believe her. I told myself this would pass. I reminded myself she's a good person. A good mother. My wife. But the unease didn't pass. It grew. At first, it was little things. Her phone always flipped face down. The way she'd walk into the other room when someone called. The hesitation when I asked what her weekend was like. Every time I tried to piece it together, something didn't fit. There was one night I'll never forget. She was in the bathroom brushing her teeth. I walked past the counter and saw her phone screen light up. A notification from an unnamed number. Just a few words. Still thinking about that night. My chest went cold. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I walked out like I hadn't seen it. But from that moment on I knew. She didn't just make a mistake. She did something she was trying to erase. And now she was living under the same roof as me, pretending everything was okay, while I was drowning in thoughts she didn't even know I had. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there with my eyes open, listening to her breathe next to me, wondering how many other lies were waiting to surface. I started to play it back in my head. The whole trip. The timeline. The photos. The gaps. I remembered the way her replies had slowed down that second night. How she stopped sending selfies. How the "miss you" stopped, then resumed only the morning after. Like she had to reset the role she was playing. And I realized something else. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she came home and planned to take the secret with her to the grave. She could have told me. She could have broken down and confessed. But she didn't. She sat across from me at dinner and asked how the girls behaved while I was doing dishes and changing diapers and folding her clothes. She kissed me goodnight with that man still in her memory. And that broke something in me. I started to pull away. Slowly at first. Just emotionally. I'd stay out longer after work. I stopped reaching for her hand. I didn't sit on the same side of the couch anymore. She noticed. I could see it in the way she looked at me, like she was waiting for me to say something. But she never asked? Maybe she didn't want to hear it. Maybe she was afraid I already knew. But I did. And the knowing made me sick. Not just because of what she did, but because I had to keep pretending. Pretending for the kids. Pretending for the neighbors. Pretending for the people at work who still thought I was living the picture-perfect suburban dream. I started to hate the house. Every room reminded me of something good that now felt fake. The kitchen where we slow danced after putting the kids to bed. The hallway where we hung birthday photos. Our bedroom, where I used to feel safe, and now only felt trapped. I wasn't angry yet. Not in the way people expect. I wasn't yelling or throwing things. The anger hadn't come to the surface. But the resentment was building underneath everything. It was the silence that hurt most. The quiet betrayal. The choice to smile in my face and pretend nothing happened. I stopped trying to fix things. Stopped asking how she was. Stopped pretending I didn't feel it when she touched me. I wasn't ready to confront her. But I also wasn't going to keep lying to myself. Something had happened. She knew it. I knew it. And soon, it was going to come out. You think you're ready to hear it. When the suspicion becomes constant, when every glance feels off, every word sounds like it's hiding something, you tell yourself you just want the truth. That knowing will be better than wondering. That confirmation will hurt less than the slow death of guessing. It doesn't. When she told me, it wasn't some dramatic confession. It wasn't sobbing or shaking or pleading. It was quiet. Controlled. Like she'd already played the conversation over in her head so many times that it came out like a script. I didn't ask her to tell me. I think the silence between us had gotten too loud to ignore. I had stopped pretending. Stopped smiling. I looked through her now, not at her. She knew I knew. And maybe the guilt became too heavy to carry. So she told me. She cheated. It happened during the trip. A bar. Drinks. A group of guys. They invited them back to the Airbnb. The hot tub. Too much alcohol. And then, at some point, she ended up alone with one of them. She kissed him. Then did more than that. She said she didn't remember his name. That was the part that hit the hardest. It wasn't someone she cared about. It wasn't someone who meant anything. Just some faceless stranger she gave a part of herself to while I was at home reading bedtime stories to our daughters. She cried while she said it. Said she felt sick. Said it wasn't who she was. That she didn't understand how it happened. That she'd never done anything like that before. That she didn't want to lie, but she didn't know how to live with herself. I didn't say much. I just sat there, staring at the floor, listening to my marriage bleed out. There's a moment when your brain splits in two. When the person you love becomes the person who destroyed you, and you don't know how to process that. You're not angry yet. You're stunned. Hollow. Every memory you ever had with them starts to shift in real time, like the ground underneath it is cracking. I went to the bedroom and shut the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I just closed it gently, sat on the edge of the bed, and tried to breathe. But it felt like something had collapsed in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed, staring into the dark, listening to the clock on the wall tick minute after minute. I kept thinking about all the times I trusted her. All the things I didn't question. All the nights I laid beside her, completely unaware that she was carrying this secret. She gave another man something that belonged to us. Something that lived between the walls of our home. Something built over years of late-night talks and tired mornings, and holding each other through hard things. She threw it away for a couple of drunk minutes. And then came home and smiled in my face. I don't know how long I stayed in that state. Hours. Maybe days. I did what I had to. Got the kids up. Got them to school. Answered emails. Folded clothes. But inside I was gone. I was somewhere else entirely, in a place where nothing felt solid anymore. She stayed out of my way. She didn't push. Didn't beg. I think she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. She went about her day like she was holding her breath. Everything she said was soft, cautious. Like one wrong move would make me explode. But I didn't explode. That would have been easier. Instead, I just started to detach. I stopped talking unless it was necessary. I moved through the house like a tenant. Ate meals on my own. Slept in the guest room. I didn't ask her how she was feeling. I didn't ask why she did it. I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't want her to tell me how sorry she was. Sorry doesn't rewind time. Sorry doesn't erase betrayal. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would. But nothing came. No tears. No shouting. Just this heaviness that sat in my chest and wouldn't move. A numb kind of sadness. The kind that drains you from the inside out. I started imagining life without her. Not in the angry way. Not as a threat. Just in a quiet, practical sense. What would the schedule look like with the girls? Who would get the house? Would I be able to look at her at school events without remembering everything? I didn't know the answers. But I knew one thing. I couldn't unhear what she said. I couldn't unknow what she did. Trust is a fragile thing. You spend years building it brick by brick. And then one careless night tears it all down. She told me the truth. And I felt nothing but the weight of it. Now it was up to me to decide if I was going to live with it. Or walk away. I tried to keep it together, for the girls, mostly. They were the only reason I was still in that house. They didn't know what was going on. Just that Dad had stopped laughing, and Mom kept looking like she was about to cry. There was no big confrontation after her confession. No screaming, no throwing bags on the lawn, no slamming doors. I think we both expected some explosion. But instead, it just sank. Quiet and heavy, like wet cement at the bottom of a well. That's how it felt walking through the house now, like every step was slower. Every breath took more effort. We didn't talk about it. Not once. Not in the days after she told me. We just existed near each other. Same house. Same hallway. Same kitchen. But it wasn't a marriage anymore. It was two people pretending for the sake of the calendar. I took the guest room. Didn't ask. Didn't explain. I just folded a blanket, moved a pillow, and that was it. She never asked me to come back. And I never would have. She tried. In small ways. Making my coffee. Leaving folded shirts on the bed. Asking about my day with a tight smile. All of it felt like damage control. Like she was managing a crisis, not trying to save a relationship. I watched her with the girls. She was still a good mom. Patient. Present. But even that had changed. She held them tighter now. Let them linger longer when they hugged her. She kissed them like she was asking for forgiveness through them, and I hated how much of her guilt I could see in their smiles. I didn't want to poison the kids with what happened. I didn't want to take away their normal just because mine had been destroyed. But the cracks showed. They always do. Our oldest asked why I wasn't sleeping in the same room anymore. I said something about snoring. She didn't believe me. Kids always know when something's off, even if they don't have the language to name it. Everything started to feel mechanical. I went to work, answered questions, smiled when I needed to. At night I sat on the edge of a bed that wasn't mine anymore and stared at the wall. I stopped watching TV. Stopped checking in with friends. Stopped answering calls from family. I didn't want to explain anything. I didn't want the looks, the sympathy, the questions I didn't have answers for. Some nights I'd walk past our bedroom and see her light still on. I never opened the door. I didn't want to know what she was thinking about. I didn't want to see her crying into her pillow or staring at the ceiling like I did. I couldn't find it in me to comfort her. That version of me was gone. I started feeling different in my own body. Restless. Jittery. Like I was walking around with my skin on wrong. I'd go outside in the middle of the night just to breathe air that wasn't recycled through shared tension. Sometimes I sat in the car and listened to the silence like it was a song I used to know. And then came the rage. Not the dramatic kind. No yelling, no smashed plates. Just the slow, burning anger that settled behind my eyes. It made me see everything differently. I'd look at her coffee mug and wonder if she thought about him while she drank from it. I'd hear her laugh with the girls and wonder how many lies she was burying beneath that sound. She kept acting like we could go back. That if she gave it enough time, maybe I'd soften. Maybe I'd forgive her. But what she didn't understand was that this wasn't about what happened that night anymore. It was about what she came back and chose to do after. She came home and looked me in the eyes. She kissed our kids. Slept in my bed. Made breakfast. Watched movies. Took photos. She lived in the lie long enough that it became part of our routine. And she let me carry all of it in silence, not knowing how far I'd already been pushed away. I caught myself thinking things I didn't like. Wondering what it would have been like if I had been the one to cheat. Wondering how long I could keep faking this. Wondering what it would take for me to finally walk out. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't stay like this forever. Something was going to break. It had to. Either her guilt, or my resentment. Either our marriage, or whatever was left of the man I used to be before she stepped into that hot tub and decided none of this was sacred anymore. The house was too quiet. The kids were too happy. And I was too hollow to keep pretending this wasn't the beginning of the end. I didn't plan to break. But it happens when you carry too much weight in your chest for too long. When you try to stay calm, keep things functioning, keep a roof over the kids, keep meals coming and bills paid. Eventually your mind finds a crack to crawl out through. Mine came on a random Wednesday. There was nothing special about it. No anniversary, no trigger, no late-night text to catch. Just dishes in the sink, homework on the table, and her moving through the kitchen like everything was still intact. She smiled at me as she passed, like she still had the right. And I felt something in me snap. Not all at once. Not like a punch. More like a quiet failure. Like an engine choking on its own oil. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the floor. I couldn't move. My hands were wet from the dish soap, shaking for no reason. My jaw locked so tight it started to hurt. The rage wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But it was there, cold, patient, waiting. I left the room. Walked down the hall. Closed the door behind me. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. It wasn't the kind of crying you see in movies. No screaming. No fists pounding into pillows. Just me, alone, sitting on the edge of the bed, tears running into my hands, trying not to make a sound. I didn't want the girls to hear. I didn't want her to come in. I didn't want anyone to see me like that. I didn't recognize the man in that moment. I used to be strong. Focused. Stable. The one who held it all together when things got messy. Now I was trying to remember how to breathe while my chest caved in. She had broken something in me that I didn't know could even be touched. She cheated. She gave herself to someone else. And then she came home and acted like that didn't mean the foundation of our entire life was rotting. I kept thinking back to the moment before she left for that trip. The way she hugged the girls. The way she kissed me. I'd stood there smiling like a fool, telling her to enjoy herself while she drove off to do something that would gut our marriage from the inside out. And I didn't even see it coming. After I pulled myself together, I didn't talk to her for 2 days. Not a word. We passed each other like ghosts. I took care of the kids, did the groceries, made excuses for why I was sleeping on the couch again. She didn't press. She walked carefully. I think she was scared. Not of me. Of what came next. Of what I'd decide. That weekend I took a drive. Told her I needed space. That was all I said. I got in the car and didn't know where I was going. Just drove until the roads got quiet. I ended up at the lake where we used to go when we were first dating. We'd take a blanket, lie in the grass, talk about the future. Back when we still believed love meant safety. I parked. Got out. Walked to the water. The sky was gray. The air smelled clean. And all I could think about was how much damage one decision could do. I wasn't innocent in our marriage. I'd been distracted before. Stressed. Sometimes short. Sometimes distant. I wasn't perfect. But I had never crossed that line. Never even looked for it. Because to me, marriage wasn't just vows. It was a line you draw around the world you build, and you never let anyone else cross into it. But she did. She let someone walk into our world like it was nothing. Like it was temporary. Like it didn't cost blood and time and years of effort to build. And I was left behind to sweep up the pieces. That night, I thought about leaving for Rail. Not just sleeping on the couch. Not just shutting down emotionally. I imagined getting an apartment. Filing paperwork. splitting holidays. Becoming one of those people who says, "We used to be married," like it's no big deal. I imagined dating again. Waking up alone. Hearing my daughters ask why Mom and Dad don't live together anymore. None of it felt better. None of it felt like healing. It just felt empty. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't even know who I was anymore. Was I a husband trying to forgive? A father trying to protect? A man trying to survive? Or was I just someone waiting for permission to let go? I stood at the edge of the water for a long time. And when I finally got back in the car, I realized something. I couldn't keep living in the silence. Something had to happen next. Either I confront her, or I walk away for good. I came home later than usual that night. Not because I had anywhere else to be. I just couldn't bring myself to walk through that door again, knowing what waited on the other side. The same air thick with everything unsaid. The same house filled with pictures of a life I wasn't sure even existed anymore. The girls were already asleep. I could hear their white noise machine humming through the hallway walls. The kitchen light was on. She was at the table, pretending to scroll her phone. She looked up when I came in, then quickly looked back down. I stood there for a moment, staring at her, and I knew I couldn't keep going like this. It wasn't even about anger anymore. It was about erosion. About what the silence was doing to me. About how her presence, her avoidance, her quiet guilt, it all felt like being suffocated by something I didn't choose. I sat down across from her. She didn't say anything. Neither did I at first. But I wasn't going to live another week pretending this was survivable without talking. I told her how it felt. Not the betrayal itself. She already knew that. But what it felt like to carry it alone. To raise our daughters in a house where trust had died and nobody had the courage to bury the body. To lie to the kids, to friends, to ourselves. To sleep next to the person who hurt me and smile through the pain for the sake of normalcy. I told her about the anger. The numbness. The emptiness. How she made me feel like a backup plan instead of a partner. How every meal, every routine, every little "How was your day?" felt like an insult. She didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She just listened. And when I was done, she finally spoke. She said she knew she'd ruined everything. That there wasn't a day that passed where she didn't feel sick over it. That she'd been living in fear since the moment she came home. Fear that I'd leave. Fear that I wouldn't. Fear that I'd stay but never love her again. She said she thought silence might keep things intact. That if she just did all the right things, if she cooked and cleaned and smiled and acted normal, then maybe, eventually, things would reset. Maybe I'd stop looking at her like she was the wreckage of something we used to believe in. But she was wrong. The silence didn't protect anything. It only poisoned it. After that night, the dynamic shifted. Not better. Not worse. Just clearer. We weren't in denial anymore. We started talking, not constantly, but when it mattered. She asked if I wanted to go to counseling. I said I didn't know. She said she understood. I asked her questions about that night, where it happened, why, how far it went. Her answers were blunt. Honest. Painful. She said she didn't do it because something was missing in our marriage. She did it because she was drunk, selfish, and craving attention from anyone who wasn't used to her stress or her tiredness or her bad days. She said she didn't recognize herself that night, and hated the version of her that showed up in that hot tub. I believed her. That didn't make it better. But it made it real. And real was something I could at least work with. We told no one else. Not yet. Not family. Not friends. Not the kids. It wasn't time. This wasn't a story that needed witnesses. It was still bleeding too heavily to bandage for anyone else's understanding. But what did change was the pressure. The pretending stopped. I stopped faking smiles. She stopped hiding tears. We started living in the wreckage, instead of walking around it like it wasn't there. That meant some days were brutal. There were mornings I couldn't look at her. Nights where we sat in separate rooms just breathing through the weight. There were flashes of hope, too, a shared laugh, a warm glance from across the room, but they were fleeting. Untrustworthy. I still didn't know what I wanted. To stay? To leave? To forgive? I thought confronting her would give me clarity. Instead, it gave me more questions. But at least now I wasn't drowning in silence. I wasn't walking through my life pretending not to feel every bruise she left. I could breathe again. Even if it hurt. We agreed on space. Time. We didn't rush a decision. We just lived, day by day, inside the broken parts. She gave me room when I needed it. I gave her honesty when she earned it. It wasn't healing yet. But it wasn't hiding either. And that was something. Even after the confrontation, things didn't get easier. They just got quieter in a different way. There's a difference between silence built from lies and silence built from pain. We had lived in the first kind for too long, tiptoeing, pretending, avoiding the truth like it would somehow disappear on its own. Now we were sitting in the second kind, and it felt heavier in a way I didn't expect. The truth was out. There was nothing else to guess. No more wondering. No more scanning her expression for signs. No more second-guessing every text, every word, every shift in her tone. But the truth didn't give peace. It gave absence. The absence of trust. The absence of safety. The absence of the version of her I used to love without question. The hardest part wasn't rage. That came and went in short bursts, irrational flashes when I'd see her putting on makeup or laughing at something the girls said. The hardest part was the grief. Because this wasn't a clean break. She hadn't packed her bags and left. I hadn't walked out. We were both still here. Still doing life. Still showing up for the kids. Still making coffee in the same kitchen. But the life we had before was gone. And I was grieving it like a death. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget, just for a second. I'd roll over expecting her warmth, the way we used to fit like puzzle pieces. And then I'd remember. And my stomach would turn like I'd swallowed something sharp. Other times I'd catch her staring at me from across the room. Not with hope. Not with desperation. Just sadness. Like she knew something in me had changed permanently, and she was trying to memorize what was left before it disappeared. I wanted to be able to tell her what I needed. I wanted to ask for space, or for effort, or for silence, or for her to leave. But I didn't know. I was stuck between wanting her to fight harder and wishing she would just walk away and stop making me decide. The kids still didn't know. They were happy. Laughing. Running through the house like nothing had happened. They still called for both of us at bedtime. Still wanted family dinners. Still climbed into our bed on Saturday mornings, wedging themselves between two people who were pretending to be whole. I resented her most in those moments. Not because she ruined a night. Because she ruined a history. All the moments that used to mean something felt tainted. All the anniversaries. All the vacations. All the small, quiet nights we spent just holding each other while the rest of the world faded away. Now I wasn't sure which parts were real. Or if they were real for both of us. She said she still loved me. She said it like a fact. But love, to me, was a thing that protected. A thing that never took shortcuts. A thing that didn't look for comfort in strangers when life got hard. I wasn't sure I believed in that kind of love anymore. I talked to no one about what happened. I thought maybe I'd eventually tell my brother, or someone from work, or even a therapist. But I couldn't say the words out loud. Not yet. Saying it felt like admitting I'd lost. That I wasn't enough. That I'd been made a fool. And maybe I had. Some nights, after the kids were asleep, she'd ask if I wanted to talk. I always said no. Not because I didn't have anything to say. But because I didn't trust what would come out. I didn't want to say something I couldn't take back. I spent a lot of time alone in the garage. In the car. On the back porch. I'd sit in the dark with a drink and try to picture a version of life where this didn't happen. A version where I still looked at her and saw home. But no matter how hard I tried, that version never came back. She kept showing up, though. She didn't retreat. She made dinner. She helped with school drop-off. She folded my clothes without asking. She offered kindness, even when I had none to return. And that made it worse. Because it reminded me of what we used to be. And how much of that had been thrown away in just one night. Somewhere in all of that quiet, I started thinking seriously about what came next. Not in theory. In real life. The paperwork. The custody plan. The splitting of accounts. The way I'd have to explain it to the kids, to family, to friends. The shame of it. The freedom of it. But I still hadn't decided. I was floating somewhere in between staying and leaving. And I hated how long I'd been there. Eventually, it stops feeling like a nightmare and starts feeling like your life. That was the scariest part. It stopped being a shock. I stopped replaying the details of that night in my head. I didn't imagine the hot tub, the stranger, the moment she made the decision that burned everything down. I already knew what happened. It was branded into me. The visuals faded, but the weight never did. I just lived with it. Day after day. Woke up. Got dressed. Took the kids to school. Ate beside her in silence. Slept a few doors away. Went to work and did my job like nothing inside me was broken. I got good at routines. On the outside, we looked normal again. Smiles for the girls, groceries in the fridge, trash taken out on time. I think that's what people don't understand about betrayal. It doesn't always lead to explosions or packed bags. Sometimes it just sits there, like smoke in the walls. You can't see the fire anymore, but the damage never left. And even though she didn't say it, I knew she was waiting. Waiting for me to make a choice. She never asked, but I saw it in the way she watched me. The way she paused when I passed her in the hallway. Like she wanted me to say something, anything, that would give her a clue about whether I was going to stay or go. But I couldn't give her that. Because I didn't know. I tried imagining the split. An apartment. Half-empty weekends. The girls being shuffled back and forth. Dividing furniture, photos, holidays. New addresses. Explanations. All of it made my chest tighten. But then I'd try to imagine staying. Letting her back in. Trying to love her the way I used to. Sleeping beside her again. Letting her touch me without flinching. Letting her say, "I love you," and not hear betrayal buried beneath the words. That made me feel even worse. I realized I was stuck in a loop. Not because I couldn't move forward, but because forward didn't look like healing in either direction. It looked like loss. Stay, and I keep sleeping in the ashes. Leave, and I become the man who gave up on his family. There was no clean way out. No version of this where I walk away whole. One night I drove around for hours after dark. I didn't tell her where I was going. I just left. No destination, just roads and headlights and a burning need to escape the air I'd been breathing. I ended up parking near a strip mall, empty at that hour, lights buzzing in the distance like static. I sat there for a long time. I thought about the version of me before this. The man who believed in her without a second thought. Who trusted her to carry our future like I carried hers. I missed him. Not because he was better, but because he still had something to hold on to. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of fighting a war with no winner. Tired of waiting for time to do something it wasn't capable of. Time doesn't fix betrayal. It just softens the edges of the blade. You still bleed, just slower. She texted me that night. Asked if I was okay. I didn't answer. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, and then I sat in the silence, wondering how much of myself I'd lost in the process of trying to forgive someone who broke me without thinking. When I came home, she was still awake. Sitting on the couch. Legs pulled up, face pale. She looked at me like she thought this was it. Like she expected me to grab a bag, say goodbye, and disappear. I walked past her. Went into the kitchen. Drank water. Looked out the window. Then I went to bed. I didn't say anything. Because I still didn't know. But I knew the moment was coming. I could feel it in the way everything had slowed down. In the way our conversations had stopped even pretending to be normal. In the way the girls had stopped asking why things felt different, and just accepted it. Something had to happen. A final decision. A direction. A truth. Because this, whatever this was, wasn't living. It was just waiting. And I couldn't do it much longer. I waited as long as I could. Longer than I probably should have. Not because I was unsure. Deep down, I think I always knew. But letting go of someone you built your life with isn't about a moment of certainty. It's about learning to live with the weight of it. The truth was simple. I couldn't stay. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even because of what happened in the hot tub. I couldn't stay because the version of love I needed died the second she crossed the line she swore she never would. Forgiveness is complicated. People love to talk about it like it's noble. Like it's something you give to set yourself free. Maybe it is for some people. But for me, it would have been a lie. Staying would have meant rebuilding on top of rot. Calling it home while knowing every wall held the memory of what she chose. So I didn't make a scene. I didn't pack bags in the middle of the night, or slam doors or give long speeches. One morning, after the girls left for school, I sat across from her at the kitchen table and told her I was done. She didn't cry. She just nodded, like she already knew. Like she'd been waiting for the sentence. She didn't beg. She didn't fight. She just looked down at her hands and whispered something I didn't catch. I didn't ask her to repeat it. We agreed on everything quickly. She'd stay in the house with the girls. I'd move out. Not far. I wanted to be close, still take them to school, show up for recitals, help with homework. I wasn't leaving my kids. I was just leaving the life that made me question my own worth every time I stepped into the bedroom. Telling the girls was the hardest thing I've ever done. We didn't give them details. Just that Dad was moving out, that we both loved them, that nothing would change between us and them. They cried. Our oldest asked if it was her fault. That crushed me. I held her for a long time and told her no, over and over, until I could barely speak. I moved into a small apartment 2 miles away. First night was quiet. Too quiet. I laid on the floor because I hadn't brought a bed yet. Just boxes and a blanket. The space echoed. But at least it was honest. At least it didn't carry the sound of secrets. The first few weeks were a blur. Work. Groceries. Visitations. Questions. Adjustments. The silence was still there, but it didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like air. I missed the girls constantly. Missed the mess. Missed the rhythm. But I didn't miss the house. I didn't miss pretending. People started to find out. Friends. Family. Most of them didn't ask for details. Some tried. I shut it down. The story wasn't for them. I didn't need their sympathy or opinions. I didn't need them picking sides or pretending they understood. This was mine. This was hers. This was ours to carry. She reached out a few times. Updates about the kids. Doctor's appointments. School things. Sometimes more than that, a picture she found in an old drawer, a question that felt like it was trying to become a conversation. I kept it short. Kind but distant. I wasn't angry. I just didn't want to go back. Not even in pieces. I still think about her sometimes. I think I always will. You don't unlove someone just because they hurt you. That's the problem with deep connection, it doesn't die easy. Even when it should. Even when you want it to. But love without trust is a cage. And I need it out? Now I'm learning to rebuild. Slowly. A new routine. A new version of myself. One that isn't defined by betrayal. One that doesn't wake up dreading the weight of the day. It's not easy. There are mornings I still ache. Nights I wonder what could have been different. But there's also peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing I didn't stay where I was being diminished. The kind of peace that comes from choosing yourself. I didn't get the ending I wanted. But I gave myself the one I deserved.